This is a shout out to all of the caregivers and caretakers out there. It's a really important subject to talk about, and one that does not get, I think, enough voice, enough press, enough really talk about. Especially looking at 2025, when Project 2025, which is part of the new administration, is going to be working on getting rid of a lot of the social safety nets, such as Medicaid, Social Security, especially when you compare to what the potential administration would have looked at, especially looking at being able to pay for home health care. I feel like I'm really a professional in this because my little brother, who passed away in November with special needs, had to have 24/7 care. He absolutely could not do anything for himself. Barely could feed himself, couldn't go to the bathroom by himself, he could vocalize, but really it did not have a language really attached to that. He could not make any choices for himself. Had like probably a 3 or 4 year old mentality. On some levels, on some other levels, probably super advanced. But of course couldn't, make any decisions for himself, couldn't write checks, couldn't even decide where his money went, or anything of that nature. Also, before she passed away, I also took over the care of my mother as well, which is actually how I got to take over the care of my brother. And so maybe I'll talk about that later on, because part of being a caregiver or caretaker is sometimes taking care of people that you don't have the best feelings towards, and having to put that aside so that you are doing what's humane, what's right, even if there's some, pent up anger or something in the past. And that's definitely was true for me with my mother, but not with my little brother. Adored my little brother. But the reason I wanted to really kind of make this video is I'm a big researcher. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a big researcher. So I was doing some research, and here's just some statistics. Approximately 100 million U.S. adults function as caregivers, providing care for a child, a parent, or another individual. And each one of those types of care, has its own, special parts to it. I think one of the best things about if you are a parent caring for a child that is not special needs, at least you know that there is a point of time when that's going to flip the script. Now, if you're caring for a parent, it's almost the other way around. Generally speaking, if you're having to care for a parent, they're on a downward slope and not on an upward slope. And then there's people like my brother, who always has been special needs his entire life. So his level of care really didn't change until the very, very, very end. It just gradually got more and more. But at his level of care that he needed his entire life was pretty high. So being higher, it wasn't something that I was not prepared for or able to do, because his level of care had been high his entire life. Some other important, interesting things are caregivers are disproportionately women, graduate students enrolled part-time and receiving financial aid. That's really interesting. Family caregivers spend an average of 24.4 hours per week providing care, with nearly 1 in 4 spending 41 hours or more per week. So this is a significant part of a lot of people's lives. If we're going to make this about the United States, and it's a significant part of Americans' lives. And that doesn't change no matter who's in office. That doesn't change. It's just that the resources that are available may very well change. So what I want to do is I want to put a spotlight on the idea of caregiving, caretakers. Number one, really shout out to all the caregivers and caretakers, because that is a thankless job. Many times people would tell me when they would see the level of care that I would provide for my brother. People would tell me how much they admired it, and that was all great. But at the end of the day, there's still that 2 o'clock in the morning when you are just busted tired, and you still have so much you have to do, because not only do you have to take care of yourself, and your own life, but you have to literally take care of an entire other human being's life. And that's a lot. It's not only a lot of hard work, it's also a true blessing. I was at a retreat because I would that's how I sort of retail therapy and retreats were sometimes how I made it. And so I was at a retreat and I was in caregiver overload, and the retreat leader said to me, "What if your brother is here to teach you strength and resilience and grace?" And that flipped the whole script from me. I began to see my role as a caretaker as my devotional. I began to see it as my way to sort of meditate and pray, and I flipped my whole mindset around it, and it began in its own special way to feed me rather than taking energy from me. It was kind of giving me energy, and I could see, I don't know, it's hard to even describe, but once I was able to see it in a different light, although it was still hard, and you're still dog tired sometimes and still have so much to do, and then have to get back up and do your regular thing too. I was able to, looking at it in a different light, it took out the sting, or like that repetitive little hamster wheel that goes on in your brain that really, really wears you out. I've discovered in my 61 years, one of the things that wears you out the most is that little hamster wheel that just plays in the back of my head, telling me all these stories, because as humans, we create story about everything, and it's really important what story you create. Are you the hero of your own story, or are you the villain of your own story, or do you live in a universe that's out to get you, or do you have a universe that's here to support you in every way and at the same time asks you to do some really hard things but does it for a reason? It's like any kind of, I believe that life is a master's class. I believe that life here on earth is a chance for us to kind of up level. And that means there's going to be some hard times. Absolutely. And as caregivers and caretakers, I think the first thing to understand is who we are and what we do, and to give credence to yourself. I give great credence to all caregivers and caretakers that you are amazing individuals just for what you do. And you're always going to feel like you didn't do it right. You're always going to feel like you didn't do enough. You're always going to feel like you could do more. And guess what? You're doing amazing. Just the fact that you are able to keep yourself alive and help keep somebody else alive, that is a step above. That is a step above what most humans know. I think for me, this past election has really shown how so many people are really they don't care about other people, And at the end of the day, we as humans are built to take care of ourselves. But I also believe that as caretakers, as caregivers, we it's just part of our empathetic nature, that we care about other people. We care about the well-being of others, even if it costs us. We still care so much. That is part of how we stay well, is by helping other people stay well. And in my philosophy, at the end of the day, a society is only as strong as its most in need member. And so the more people that we have in our society that are at need, the weaker our society is. And so I actually believe that making sure everyone, or at least having the resources, and at least trying to make sure that everyone has at least basic needs, I think that actually makes us a better, stronger world for all of us. I don't think it's something that takes away from resources that I have to help someone else, and then I don't get those resources back. I believe that it makes the society and the world a better place that I get to live in, and my family gets to live in as well. So anyway, some health and well-being impacts. Many caregivers experience negative psychological effects, with some at higher risk, especially those caring for individuals with advanced dementia. I will say, thank goodness, for myself, I'm blessed that I never had to take care of someone with dementia. I think as my mother got close to the end, she was not a very happy individual. So I don't think she ever had like dementia, but there was definitely a change in attitude, and it was much, much harder to care for her, especially because I already had feelings about it. So I had to really, really step into the mode of, what is, how can I think of this person as a living human being, and how can I do my very best to at least make sure that their daily needs are taken care of, and then it's kind of up to them whether or not they're going to be happy. Just at least creating the atmosphere where they have the ability to be happy, and and find meaning in their own life. And at that point, that's all I got. You know what I mean? So shout out to those that are working with people with dementia. I think that is really, really, really tough, especially if you don't have a great relationship going into it. Here in America, we rewrite everything. We find out that most of our foundational stories are just sort of, concoctions that we put together to make ourselves feel better. That's why Columbus Day has gone away, and why when I think of Thanksgiving, I think of it more of celebrating the indigenous people. You know what I mean? And the same can be true for these hallmark moments where, we're all supposed to have this wonderful little family, and we've got these grandparents we get to go to, and everyone is about taking care of and loving each other. And I don't think very many of us actually grew up that way, or I think at least a lot of people didn't grow up that way. And so that can be really hard if you didn't grow up that way, and there's this expectation that that's the way things should have been, and now you're having to deal with somebody that's getting even meaner and harder to deal with because they're moving into dementia. So if you are in that situation, gosh, I just want to give you so much heart and so much love, and just how strong are you? That's a strength. That's a strength that I don't think the average society even understands. We think of strength as how much you can power lift, or how much money you have, or how big your house is. But strength is being able to wake up and do the hard stuff and keep going, even when it's really, really almost impossible. Even to keep going when you're at the point of giving up. If you are that person, and I've been there so many times, where I kept going even at the point of just ready to give up, that's strength. 19% of caregivers in one study were found to be burdened, with 2 being highly burdened. Caregivers report higher levels of depression and anxiety compared to non-caregivers. However, 83% of caregivers in one survey viewed caregiving as a positive experience. So do be mindful for yourself that depression and anxiety can absolutely be part of caregiving. I think I've tried to be very honest. I've tried within the past year to be much more honest about my own mental health and the things that I've gone through. I definitely am a very spiritual person. I think if you look at my channel, you see that I work with the angelic realm, and I study Tantra, and all these, and I do yoga, and I meditate every day, and yet I still deal with high levels sometimes of depression and anxiety. And that's just, and once you understand that is a proclivity for the situation that you are in, because half of our struggle, half of our suffering is that thinking that things should be different. And so when you understand that is simply the proclivity or the potential for the situation you are in, it's not necessarily like it's a prescription, like you have to. But once you understand that is something that you should be mindful of, something that you should create as many ways for yourself to deal with that, you take away some of the suffering, and the suffering is what's harmful. The pain isn't harmful. It's the suffering that's harmful. It's not the wounds that you get in the battle. It's these self-inflicted wounds. It's where you keep picking over the scabs and you make them worse and worse and worse after the battle. That's where true damage happens. Because pain in the battle, that's just the way. That is just what's going to happen. That is life. But it's how we deal with it afterwards that can either create more strength or have us really tear ourselves down more. We really have that choice. And it goes on and on to say about how caregivers can have great financial and career impacts, and that ethnicity and education levels are found to be associated with caregiver burden in one study. And on and on and on. But so just the main thing I really wanted to talk about today is, number one, if you are a caregiver or caretaker in any shape, way, or form, kudos to you. Find however you can to take care of yourself. I know for me that I put myself in some very bad financial situations simply because I was in survival. So given better circumstances, given not having the burden of that, I would have made far different financial choices. However, I'm proud of myself for the financial choices I made because I did it to keep the lights on and food on the table and everyone cared for. Now I'm at a point in my life where it's time for me to really, really take a really deep, abrupt look at that and fix it. So I'm now at a stage, since my brother has passed away, now I have that energy back that I spent taking care of him. Before my little brother passed away, I started having conversations with him in my mind. I started understanding things that he was telling me. And one of the things that he told me was that it was time for me to be as much of an advocate for myself as I had been for him. And so now is my time to do that. And so if you're at a space where you are doing what you have to do to survive, give yourself a pat on the back, because that's okay. You're doing what you have to do. And also ask yourself if maybe there's a different way for you to look at it or a different way for you to do it. If you are a caregiver or caretaker, I hope you'll comment below. Would love to be here to be supportive. I'd love to have a whole community of people that are here to support and help each other. And right before he went, one of the things I asked my little brother, and this is how I'm starting to end things, I asked him, is it going to be okay? And I heard him say, it always is.